Hello. Welcome
Hello,
back.
mover.
It's April Fool's and we don't have anything. So don't anybody think everything we say is serious tonight. So we're not that creative, but we got a special guest, Rocky Apollo.
Welcome, man.
Apollo's his call sign. Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.
Flight surgeon, also owner of Go Flight Medicine. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But hey, thanks for being on the channel tonight. It's awesome to have a flight doc and to get some perspective on some questions that we have, because neither Gonky nor I passed biology.
No, we just speculate.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here. It's fun to talk through some of this stuff with you guys.
Yeah. So just real quick, you are currently a flight surgeon in the Guard, and you have your own civilian practice as well as some other stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's at least 10% true, so it's valid.
Perfect.
Yeah, so in the Colorado Guard, and then I'm an AME for all the FAA guys. I do a lot in the HIMSS program, so that's like mental health, substance abuse stuff. But then I'm also an ER doctor, so I just finished a night shift last night, got off at 6 a.m., but here I am.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, cool. So just starting off, a lot of people are always curious, just how do you become a flight surgeon? Like, what's the process, and kind of what's the difference between a military flight doc and say what you do as an AME?
Yeah, I mean, the big difference between the AME and the DoD flight surgeon, if you're in Navy, Army, or Air Force, would be just the medical standards. Generally, the medical standards for the military is going to be a little bit stricter, because you guys are doing a lot more than just flying the bus from city to city, and so the medical standards are going to be a lot stricter. Also, single seat aircraft. As far as how one becomes a flight surgeon, it's kind of a funny thing, because a lot of the flight surgeons, at least the young ones in the Air Force and in the military, are some of your most minimally trained legal physicians in the country.
You don't say.
You don't have to do a residency training, So when I was what we call a GMO, General Medical Officer Flight Surgeon, you essentially you go to medical school, you graduate from medical school, you have your MD or your DO, so you have a doctorate, and then you finish 1 year of residency, and you finish all your board exams, and that's the minimum threshold to get a medical license in the United States. And so once you check all those boxes, They put you through some additional training. The Air Force does the aerospace medicine primary course, and then you do all your aircrew training, and all that takes maybe like another 6 months, and then you're out there with a unit and you're practicing medicine. So you guys probably don't necessarily know that little dirty little secret of flight medicine, but not all guys are in that category. Some people have gone to residency, got burnt out, and are coming back to do something fun and hang out with a bunch of the fighter pilot bros. But that's generally how one becomes a flight surgeon.
Yeah, we had, so at both our squadrons, Gonky, we had one at 204. Well, she was a Navy, and she was, like you said, and she wanted to go do dermatology. And she's like, well, I'm just doing this to pay. So, and then she went to South Beach, and now she's rich.
Yeah.
So that was that side of the spectrum. And then Doc Ott, stroke.
Yeah.
Stroke was, I mean, what is he? He's like
a pulmonologist, right?
15 years into his career by the time he gets here, and he's like, I wanted to fly in the jets. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. But Paul, I think that's kind of par for the course, right? Same thing with pilots. It's like once you have 250 hours, you're good to go in a fast jet. Or in the civilian world, the guys got to do 1,000 hours in the piston stuff, and it seems like maybe it's more expedited on the mill side.
So is the training more like, I guess, is it more of a specialty once you get to the Air Force and you're like, okay, I'm going to be a flight surgeon? Are they talking about like aerospace physiology, and like, is it more geared toward the flying side of your residency stuff?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what all the additional training is the Air Force gets for you. So it's a lot of it's just learning the medical standards, what actually is important or not important for aviation medicine, in terms of you could have certain injuries that don't really affect your flying career, and other things that could end your flying career. So it's learning all those medical standards and the policy that FAA has in place. And then another big part of it is the physiology. So we do the centrifuge as well. We do the altitude chamber. We do pretty much all of the same types of things that you guys do on the aircrew side. On the pilot side, when I was going through, we actually went through the full SEER course. I don't know if they're still doing that with flight surgeons, but we went up to Spokane and did the full SEER course, emergency parachute, did the in Pensacola we did the water survival. So that's kind of like 6 months.
You're like, I know I'm a doctor.
Yeah. I thought the water survival was one of the most fun courses that they ever put us through. Yeah. That was a good one.
Air Force water survival, Gonky, not Navy.
Yeah.
No,
did you get to do some initial in the air? Because in the Air Force, did you get to do some of the initial flight training to see?
Yeah, they put us through, like, as part of the aerospace medicine. I think it was the second one. There's like 3 or 4 different ones. I think it was the second one. They network or they coordinate with some other civilian school, and they have us do about 10 to 20 hours of just general aviation training, just to be able to kind of learn some of the ins and outs of that. I think the Navy actually gets all their flight surgeons equivalent of a PPL. I wish the Air Force did that, but they stop a little shy of that.
Wow. So just changing gears a little bit on the civilian side, being an AME is a big deal, right? Like where I live, there's one, they're not a lot everywhere. So what is the process to do that on the civilian side and do the civilian aerospace medicine?
Yeah, I think it differs a little bit. If you have military experience like I did, I only had to go to the refresher course. So for me, it was just like a 3 or 4 day course that I signed up for. I think those that are just coming out of any other specialty of medicine that say, hey, I want to go be an AME, they have to be, a medically licensed physician. I don't think they have to have finished a residency, but then they have to go to the course in Oklahoma City, the FAA AME course. And then when you get certified, the first year, you're just a regular AME. You can't do class 1 physicals. So all your ATP commercial airline pilots can't get their physical from you. You have to kind of like learn the ropes doing second class and third classes. As a military guy, I kind of came in as a first class they call it a senior AME that can do first classes. And then you can do some additional trainings too. So now I've gone through, I can do air traffic controllers. They call that employee examiner. And now I do the HIMSS program, which I'm only one of 2 in the state that does that. And so there's very few HIMSS trained AMEs. And the whole HIMSS thing is kind of funny because I'm sure you guys have gotten ads on your social media or on your as you're just browsing the internet about this company called HIMSS. Have you seen
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not. So yeah, it's the
Yeah.
a male problem in the bedroom.
Yeah, so you got
is
either
what I see
erectile
all-
dysfunction treatments or guys with male pattern baldness, and so it's
Or both.
really, yeah, or both, yeah.
the
And
double whammy.
it was unfortunate for the FAA. They had this program that existed, for decades, and then this company
Yeah.
comes along, and now one of the biggest challenges being a HIMSS AME is trying to explain to my patients that no, that's not the same thing. We're not going to be talking about your erectile dysfunction today.
I mean, you could. It could
That's
lead. One
perfect.
could lead to the other. Which, by the way, why don't we explain what HIMSS is for those of us that have no idea?
Yeah, and I'll also say, if for your show notes, I'll give you the FAA's policy on erectile dysfunction medicines, because there is one.
Yeah, mover needs that. I'm good.
But
I'm not the married guy, Gonky. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. But so in the context of FAA, HIM stands for Human Intervention Motivational Study, and so it's like, what do those words together even mean? It's not really clear, and I think my understanding is the FAA kind of did that to try to remove the stigma of mental health and substance use disorders from this thing. So when someone says I'm on the HIMSS program, it's not I'm on the mental health and drug and alcohol program, right? So the intent is really just to monitor pilots that have had issues in this area and try to create a system that has a balance between getting people to disclose things and keeping them flying, rather than just like laying down the hammer and destroying someone's career so that people won't disclose. And that's kind of the purpose of the HIMSS program. It started as just an alcohol program, and now it's kind of ballooned into this whole mental health thing. So a lot of my patients are on antidepressants for anxiety or depression. A lot of military folks with PTSD. A lot of like young people coming up that were treated for ADHD when they were adolescents or in college, and they have to go through this process too. But a large majority of people go through the process and come back in the end and do get approved and get medically certified.
So you find military or Air Force versus FAA, who's moving forward faster with mental health? Like, do you find one or the other is kind of getting better at recognizing these problems, or is it still a stigma no matter which way you go?
Well, I think there'll always be a little bit of a stigma, and that's unfortunate, but things are changing slowly. I'm a little bit more removed now from the Air Force's policy, because even in the Guard, I've been doing a very different mission. I've been doing this mission called CCAT, which isn't really involved with flight medicine. It's the critical care aeromedical evacuation teams. So I'm doing more of that. So those of you guys that have flown the heavies, that mission's a big part of that.
We have that. Keesler.
Yeah. So I've been doing the CCAT mission for a little while now. But on the FAA side, the HIMSS thing has been amazing in the last couple of years. I mean, just today I logged into my FAA login to complete a couple physicals, and there was a note I'm saying that they just approved 3 new antidepressants that pilots can get special issuances for. That's going to go live at the end of April, and they already approved a 5th one last summer. And so there's been a lot of movement to, I think, make it easier and remove barriers for pilots with mental health conditions to get medically certified. And I've seen that happen in a number of ways just in the last couple of years. So it's been really good, I think, in trying to remove stigma and help pilots to get medically certified that struggle, because you guys are human too,
Yes. Yes, we are.
Some of you are.
Well, not Gonky. But we're going to talk about that whole thing here in a minute. But for the, just for the basic flight doc stuff, we thought it'd be cool to ask you some of the aerospace physiology questions, because people always ask us, and we're like, well, blood bad, brain good.
That's when you got it. There you go. You don't need me.
So from the medical side, what happens when we're out there pulling G's?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to what you just said, I mean, we can get more technical about it, so I mean, the G forces, it's when you say G, what does that mean? I'm doing 9 G's. So that's a multiplier. That's a magnitude of the 1 G that we're experiencing right now. So we're all sitting at 1 G, I think, depending on where you guys are, but I don't think anybody's on the ISS. So we're all sitting here. Yeah,
that's right.
I didn't notice Gonky's the only one out of the 3 of us not celebrating Mustache March. I'm sorry to have to say that.
No, I don't. No, I don't do mustaches anymore, man.
And those of us that are in the Guard Reserve side, we got a little bit of extra going on too.
The full beard march. Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, Yes, when you're doing 9 Gs, you're actually 9 times the force of gravity that we're experiencing here. So obviously our bodies did not evolve. They weren't designed to do well in that environment. So that's why we have to do certain things to try to remain conscious. Kind of just the basics of the way G-forces work. You have, at least the way we understand it in the medical world, is the G-forces act on our body in 3 different axes. So you have the x-axis, which really is going right into the chest. That's the one astronauts have to deal with, because they're in a seated position going directly up, and all those G-forces are transmitted directly into their chest from the front to the back. Then there's the y-axis, kind of more like your yaw axis, which doesn't really, maybe plays a role more in like, you think of race car drivers when they go tight turn, they kind of get pushed against the door. And the one that you guys need to worry about in the fighter pilot world is on the z-axis, right down the spine. And that's the most important one, though, because all of our blood vessels actually kind of move in that direction from the cranium down to the toes. And so when those G-forces increase, that blood is actually getting heavier, and it's really challenging to keep it up to the cranium so you may remain conscious. And that's where the G-suit comes in and the anti-G straining maneuver.
Yeah.
So do astronauts have to worry about blacking out? Dumb question.
They do, but the G tolerance is much higher in that direction in the x-axis. If you think about it, because it's displacing most of the blood. I mean, the heart does start to struggle a little bit when all the blood is pooling in the back of the heart, right? But the backside of the brain gets engorged as well. So actually the visual cortex, the part of the brain that does vision and balance, are in the back part. And so that engorgement can cause some issues with those senses. But generally, your G tolerance is much stronger in that direction versus in that Z-axis.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, dude.
So I guess G suits, right? G suits inflate. I'm old school. I flew with the old G suit that was not that great. Have you flown with the A-tags? Yeah.
I've flown with both. Yeah.
What does the A-tags do that because when I first started, we had the PBG, the pressure breathing under G, which was the helmet that would inflate and give you force, which we can talk about that, right? Your lungs. That's the other part of this about breathing under G. It's very hard to breathe under G once you let out that air.
Yeah, there's kind of the 2 components. So there's the keeping the brain perfused. We call that the cerebral perfusion. And then there's the breathing component. Yeah, because that pressure on the lungs, especially if you get behind it and you don't start off with full lungs, it's going to be really hard to inhale. And the lungs, if you ever look at lungs, like when we do our anatomy class, the lungs are just such fine little fibers, in film, between those little air sacs, tiny little balloons, just, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them. And if it's already compressed and tight because of the gravity, you're not going to be able to open them up. That's why you kind of learn right before the G's come on, you take that deep breath and then you close the glottis, where you just close it so it doesn't all escape. And you do those very sharp exhale inhales. And part of what you're doing is you're taking a breath and oxygenating, but the other part is you're releasing that tremendous amount of pressure on your chest long enough to let that actually heart beat, because the heart has so much pressure on it. That release of pressure lets it actually get a beat in and allow that the perfusion to continue. And then the other thing that the G suit's doing that you mentioned is it's squeezing the lower part of the body, which is less important, your legs and your lower abdomen, and trying to displace the rest of that blood away from those areas and into the more important areas, which is your chest and your cranium. And then that's why you're also contracting those muscles, squeezing the butt cheeks, squeezing those big quads, calves, and just trying to keep the blood out of those areas and keep it into the brain so you don't go cold there.
Yeah, and for the record, I made fun of the Rafale guy because he made a G strain that sounded like ah. And I'm telling you right now, no
great, dude.
Pilot. Great. I'm just wondering. Look, when you do the air exchange, there should be no moaning. There should be. It should just be a right.
Yeah, I mean, not only does it make you sound silly, but it's not an effective G strain, not an effective anti-G strain maneuver. Yeah.
Thank you. Gonky, you had a question. Sorry.
Is there any truth to different body types being more resistant to G forces? Like we always used to be like, so and so is 5 feet tall, smokes like a train, he can take 20 G's. Is there any truth to any of that?
Yeah, there's definitely truth to that. I mean, that's why when they do your centrifuge, they first kind of test your G tolerance. They specifically tell you don't G strain. Let's just see where you're at. And there's a wide range. And when someone starts to gray out, black out, and G lock from one person to another, and height is part of it because the length of that blood vessel from your heart to your brain is one variable. Some people may start off with a little bit elevated blood pressure, which, I mean, bad in terms of long-term, in terms of like heart disease and stroke risk, but that can actually be a little bit protective for the G-lock. And so there's a variety of things that actually go into it. Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's interesting.
What's the ATAGs do? Why is that so much better? Or is it that much better? I never flew with it, so.
No, it is. And it's been a while since I've looked at the actual published data. I want to say, if I recall, and I have to look this up afterwards to see if I'm not saying anything inaccurate, but I think it gives you maybe 1 G more of protection than like the older kind of legacy suits. And part of it is that they have a full circumferential bladder around the legs, versus like the legacy suits had little compartments. And so there'd be little areas that weren't applying pressure. And then I think the other big thing is that I think the way it coordinates with the accelerometer and the actual avionics of the aircraft being able to deliver a more accurate increase in contraction versus like the amount of G's that you're experiencing. So I think it was those two things. They cover a larger surface area of the abdomen too, if I recall. So there were several different things that the ATAGs did that improved it. And I want to say it got you like maybe 1 G more of protection, but it's been a while since I was reading about that.
I mean, you say that, but if your resting tolerance is 4 and you get another couple G's just from a normal G suit, and you get 1 more. I mean, now all of a sudden, you're
a big difference.
King Kong. Yeah.
Yeah. Big difference.
A lot.
Yeah. I mean, you combine the improvement with the ATAGs, and then also the collision, the ground collision warning systems. What's the I remember I was at the auto GCAS. I remember when that was getting incorporated as well. So those two things combined have saved so many pilots. It's been really
what does
tremendous.
Buckley have? Are they block 30s?
I just switched to the unit, and I should know that. I want to say they're actually block 25s, but they
they do have.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I just joined the Colorado Guard from the Utah Guard just a couple months ago, so I'm actually going to in process this week.
Way too early for questions like that, then.
Yeah, they're gonna kill me if I mess that one up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Going back to the physiology, because we've talked about a mishap, Thunderbirds, with the push-pull, and I did an interview with Saab folks, the Gripen demo, where he does a lot of negative G, positive G. And I was watching this going, holy crap, because I could think as a pilot. How does that affect your G tolerance? Can you talk about like physiologically what happens there?
Yeah, the push-pull can be really, really challenging for our physiology just to deal with. Kind of what you're saying, like you're going from negative G's, positive G's, back to negative G's, back to positive G's. And so the body is, trying to deal with these fluid shifts. And, as what your body tries to do is, as soon as blood starts to come out of the brain, it doesn't want you to lose consciousness. So it tries to increase your heart rate. It tries to increase the contractility of heart, give you a better squeeze. All your blood vessels try to constrict and tighten up, but as soon as you do the negative G's, the opposite happens, right? And so if you have the opposite thing happening in your body, and all of a sudden your body's trying to deal with, blood actually flowing and congesting the brain and trying to stop that, and now all the blood vessels are opened up, and then you go all of a sudden turn like positive G's back on, and you've lost that kind of compensatory mechanism, so you can't compensate, and all of a sudden your G tolerance is just tanked. And we see a lot of mishaps right in that scenario. And I know you guys are trained to that, right? To be careful in those scenarios.
Aware of it.
It's
definitely aware of it.
G's are the most. I lost a friend in the B course in F-16 school because he G-locked. And dude, it's a scary thing in these fighters. Go ahead.
What is it? So when I was a young type going through the horn rack, the older guys used to be like, you got to build up your G tolerance like you're drinking, like your alcohol tolerance. So like, when I flew a lot of BFM, man, the
great fighter pilot analogy there. I love that.
That's how I was taught. You got
I get it.
It's like caveman style, right?
Yeah.
But when I was flying a lot of BFM, man, G's were not a problem. But when I would take a break from it, go do, I don't know, laser bombs, something that didn't require a lot of G's, and come back to it, it was always much more difficult. Like it was never really taught to me, like, does anything inside the body happen? Like if you're conditioning wise, as maybe some sort of auto reflex to G forces, like building a tolerance, is that a thing?
Yeah, I think it almost is certainly a thing. I mean, there's all kinds of like small little like modifications your body's making any time you're being exposed to stress, right? I mean, that's the whole point of exercise. We're stressing our body in a kind of like very intentional way to get a certain result. And so I don't know if I know the evidence behind that enough to like know specifically what's happening, but there's all kinds of different baroreceptors in our body that's turning fluid shifts and, thinking about like how we're reacting to our stressful situations. But yeah, I mean, I noticed, remember, I was flying in F-16 probably once a week when I was at Aviano and F-16 squadron there. And I remember noticing the exact same thing. And I also remember just how exhausted I would be after these high G sorties. I mean, exhausted in a way I've never experienced. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they used to, I used to teach students too, we go out and do a G warm, and that was kind of like your measure for the day. It's like, hey, if it's tough for you, no harm, no foul. We don't have to, we can come back and I know some of the G tolerance issues can be like if you're dehydrated, things like that. But yeah, I was just curious. Like I said, they always tell me it was like drinking, and I don't drink, so it was a poor analogy.
You flew the Hornet, yeah? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Gentleman's aircraft. Doc, have you ever gotten Geezels?
I've never gotten Geezels, no, but I mean, I've definitely seen lots of other people that have.
So that's what the capillaries rupturing, the small.
Yeah. So I mean, you get them like a lot of times in like the back of the arms, because if you think about when you're sitting like this, all that blood pools there, or in the back of the thighs, anywhere that the blood would pool. Yeah. And then those capillaries are so tiny, they get overwhelmed. They just start to burst. Those are tiny little bruises. That's what they call them. The medical term is petechia.
Petechia.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your.
You hurt your petechia.
Yeah.
I petechia'd myself.
I'm
today.
going to use that from now on.
Yeah. Gonky's off.
At the least, your guys' vocabulary is going to be much higher after today. Not with any words you care about, but
this is. It's too bad we don't have a squadron to go back to demonstrate what we've learned. Hey, boys, our petechia is really messed up today. Check it out before you get out there. All right. Before we move on to the next topic, just a couple from the audience so we can catch up real quick. Crazy Pete says Chappie. And as a Viper guy, Chappie flew west. I don't know if you knew that, but Louis Gossett Jr. unfortunately passed away. Is that an A-10 tail behind you?
It is. It is an A-10 tail. Yeah. Yeah, that's from the 25th Fire Squadron, Pilsung in Osan Air Base. And those are actually a couple of rounds for both the A-10 and F-16 behind me.
That's a 30 and a 20?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Terrible.
That's awesome.
I thought that was like a rifle round and a 20 millimeter. Oh, that's terrible.
Some patients brought me those. Some guys that still come out to see me as an AME that brought me those shells. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. On the subject of G's, I'm just trying to keep it in line with what we're talking about. JB Smoke says, do the docs ever experience 9 G's? Which I'm assuming you go fly, you do whatever we do, right?
Yeah, it depends what your primary airframe is. So for those of us that go to F-16 squadron, we do the 9G profile on the centrifuge. I think if you're going to F-15, you do the 7 or 7.5 G profile. I don't know. What do you guys do on the Hornet? What's the profile you guys run?
7.5.
7.5, yeah.
Yeah.
F-15. I asked it acting like I didn't know.
Yeah, right.
The airplane will give you more. That's all. That's all they test you.
Yeah.
My old squadron that went from Vipers to A-10s, they still had a sign in the squadron bar that said it's hard to be humble at 9Gs, and I was, whatever.
It's hard to be humble
at 9Gs, man. I mean, but anyway, Gonky, you had a question.
I totally forgot it.
All right.
Take me off my game, man.
So we've talked about G-forces, right? But as we wear masks. Well, some of us do. Gonky would probably never wear the mask because of the pressurization. But we worry about the other factor we worry about, especially as single-seat fighter pilots, is the physiological effects of altitude. Just, the higher you go, the tougher it is to stay conscious because of various factors. What do you think is the biggest threat, and kind of how do we mitigate, some of these things as single-seat fighter pilots with what the body does, and what is the body even doing?
Yeah, I mean, G's, we talked about, that's one of the biggest threats to the combat aviator, for sure. We lose a lot of guys with that. I think spatial disorientation is probably the other really big one, probably bigger than hypoxia, but hypoxia still remains a threat. But spatial D's, it's such a tough one to prepare for, and especially when you get spatial D, it's just really challenging. One, to recognize it, and then two, even if you recognize it, to solve that problem. And we had a terrible incident that happened when I was at Aviano where we lost a guy, got spatial D. I was actually flying in that 4 ship that night, and
Oh no.
yeah, taking off with 4 and coming back with 3 was that was a horrible situation. I think spatial D is obviously one that's up there in terms of when you look at the number of fatal mishaps across like the Air Force every year, probably as deadly as any of them. But then, yeah, hypoxia as well. You know, you get a cabin depressurization, rapid D, which obviously we all practice that in the chamber, or even a slow leak and you're not wearing your mask, you have your mask down at the side or something like that. And, you know, you're setting yourself up for some major issues. Cause that's another one that's very, it's very kind of sneaky when you may not notice that all of a sudden you're starting to get a little more and more confused. So that's one to watch out for too. Did you guys ever experience a rapid decompression or?
No, I had the hypoxia where it was the slowing because of the pressurization problem. You know, and that was it was at the worst. It was at night. Night is probably to me the worst time to ever have it because you know, like one of my symptoms is, so for those that don't know, we go to the chamber or the now they call it the, what is the ROBD?
ROBD,
yeah. And you got to tell them what your symptoms are because everybody's different or whatever. And one of mine's light loss. You know, I start to, you know, things start to dim a little bit. Well, at night, you always have light loss. I mean, it's nighttime. So it was one of those, you know, I knew the only saving grace was I knew the jet had a pressurization problem. So when you started feeling that euphoric feeling and like, hey, oh crap, you know, the thing about the Navy is, you know, Gonky, right? They're always 100%. And that's the difference between Air Force regulators and Navy. Air Force, it's a schedule, right? It's the normal, and then you would gang load if you needed to.
That's your emergency setting.
Yeah. Navy's 100% all the time. And then, and then now some of these newer jets with the OBOGs, they're having problems just by itself. I mean, the OBOGs are having issues too. Have you ever seen, you know, the onboard oxygen generation system problems that people have talked about? Because I know some Viper squadrons have it.
Yeah, I have never been in a unit with the OBOGs. I remember they had the whole OBOGs kind of mystery debacle thing with the F-22s. You remember what that was going on? And they were, and I remember it was Bones Flotman, I think, was part of that. Like he's a pilot physician that was like working that up. And I remember him telling me about what they were trying to sort out there. I've never been in the squadron with the OBOG, so I mean, I know how it works, but I don't recall the exact specifics of where they were having the issues there. But
is there an airplane? Is there a specific airplane in the? I mean, other than the F-22, where like they have OBOGs issues? So like in the Navy, the Hornet, the original Hornets and the A models, like Mover Flew, had LOX bottles, and then the newer ones, they had the OBOG system, and that thing. I never trusted it. And I had a hypoxia incident in it. But is there an airplane in the Air Force that's kind of like, you got to watch this one?
The T6. I mean, I flew the T6. Yeah, it had zeolite dust, and I still don't even know what zeolite is. But that was one of the things that were like, check your mask for zeolite dust.
What the hell is zeolite?
I'm not familiar with that.
I don't either.
Yeah, I definitely don't know enough about those issues they were having with OBOGs. I remember hearing about it and looking into it. That's near the end of my active duty career, and I never really got the whole scoop there. And all the units I've ever flown with, we use LOX.
Does it surprise you that there's really not a whole? I mean, they on the civilian side they talk about hypoxia and symptoms, but there's no. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's no requirement for just a straight civilian guy looking to get, you know, class 1 medical, has never flown the military, to have any kind of ROBD or chamber, right? Am I right on that?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. I don't think the airlines have any requirement for chamber. Do you guys do chamber requirement? I don't think so.
No, that really surprises me.
Had something for a high altitude endorsement or something. I thought they had.
No, I got my high altitude endorsement before I was in the military, and it was literally, you get in an airplane, you go up to, I don't know, whatever, thousands of feet, and you land, and they sign you off.
What if you're flying aerobatics? Is there any additional training that you have to do on G's or hypoxia or chamber? No?
Not for G's. I know, because I did aerobatics before I went into the military, and there was just all right, don't throw up, you know, and that was kind of the end of that.
No, I mean, that's such a good point, though, because, you know, like one of the reasons we do the chamber training is so you can recognize the hypoxia when you have it, just because it is so, you know, just hard to recognize. And And if you've never had that experience, you don't necessarily know, and you start to make, the wrong call.
Yeah.
On general aviation side. Yeah. That's interesting.
Payne Stewart. I mean, the Payne Stewart thing, right?
Yeah. The Payne Stewart one. That's a very famous one. Yeah.
The 7.3, right? It's one of the South American, I think 7.3s, right? The thing.
Was it Hellenic? Wasn't that Greek?
Might have been.
Like
maybe
Hellenic.
Maybe it was.
Intercepting them.
Yeah. No, I remember when I had my hypoxia incident. I mean, I'd had all the military training and I'd been in the chamber and stuff, and it took me a while to be like, oh, like I've been here before. It's like having a conversation with myself. I'm like, do something.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it could have saved your life. I mean,
but
you would have done without that training for sure.
Right. So and I always think about like the civilian guys that fly with them. Like, man, it's like they always used to tell us, if you have any problems on your first cat shot, you're going to die because you don't know what normal is. I'm like, that's probably like hypoxia. If you have, your first event, if it's the real one, you're probably not going to catch it.
There's a good chance. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Doc, have you had any, I had a friend of mine that he was doing like a functional check flight, and they always, they test the pressurization system and they go up high and stuff. He got the bends. Can you talk to that? Have you had to deal with that as a flight surgeon? Kind of any pilots that you've seen that have had like the full on, rapid decompression where you get, it's not hypoxia, but you're talking bends like a scuba diver would have.
Yeah, we had one case that I know of for sure that we had to dive when I was at Aviano. It's less common definitely in aviation than in scuba, just because you have to go up so much higher to get the same pressure differentials than going down into the ocean. But the U2 guys, when I was at Osan Air Base, we had U2s there, and those guys, it's always a risk. That's why they have to do all the exercise and pre-breathing before they put the suit on, and try to make sure they have this breathe the oxygen and try to denitrogenate the body. Because essentially what's going on there is, we're not breathing pure oxygen in the air normally. We get nitrogen into the solution of the blood, and then that's the nitrogen bubbles, if they form, become the problem. And so they become little areas that can obstruct blood vessels, right? So it's almost kind of like having a stroke, if you think about it. You get a little bubble that shouldn't be there. We call them gas emboli. And then they can float around, and wherever they land and stop is where you're going to have the symptoms. And so there's different kinds of, we call that decompression sickness, DCS. So there's the bends, which is usually where it's in a joint space. It's like you start to get elbow pain or knee pain or hip pain. And then it can get into the chest. They call it the chokes. Okay. And then they call it neuro DCS is when it gets up into the brain, and that can cause all kinds of different symptoms, like a stroke, essentially a stroke. And the case that we had when I was at Aviano, this person landed and had these weird neurologic symptoms that we were trying to figure out. And then, if I recall, what had happened in that case is there's DCS, decompression sickness, where a person's just flying, the bubbles form and they end up in somewhere. And there's another one called AGE, which is the air gas embolus. And that's when you have like a little tear in your lungs. And this guy had just finished like having like a bad cold, his first flight back, and was doing BFM. And it was during the G straining maneuver. He was probably, really bearing down, trying to, do the G strain. And that's when he had his symptoms. And we think probably what happened was he probably had a little injury to his lungs that allowed some air directly into the bloodstream. And then they got up into his brain, and he had some weird neurologic deficits, and fortunately was able to land. There was a whole in-flight emergency, and we had to respond, but he landed safely. And then we took him out, and we had to dive him in the dive chamber, the hyperbaric chamber, which all that was set up with the Navy set up all those dive tables on how to do that.
Wow.
You guys had to transport him somewhere where they had that equipment, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, every air base has to kind of have a plan in place for where's the nearest chamber, who are we going to use. That's one of the things the flight surgeons do, is we kind of own that process. Like, what's the emergency process? Whenever I would go on like a TDY somewhere, I'd get there on like the, what do they call it, the advon team. I get there in the advon team, and, I'm trying to figure out all these different things, which hospital we're going to use, if there's trauma. But one of the things I always have to make sure is I know that there's a chamber somewhere that if we have a DCS case that we can go dive our guys. Yeah.
What are you doing in deployed? Yeah. What are you doing in a deployed location?
You try to find the closest one. Sometimes it might be, hey, we need to get them back home. But then the problem is also transporting those patients because you don't want you don't want to fly them. You don't bring them up to altitude again. So you'd have to maybe fly them in a situation where you can like over pressurize a cabin, get an aircraft there that can, you know, do more than the standard like pressurization schedule. Yeah.
Wow.
So you docs actually do work.
Yeah. Can you believe that?
TDYs. I thought it was just, you know, you make a go pill bag, right? Or the, you know, the day after bag for all the rough nights, and that's it.
Yep. That's the good old days when we used to do that. Yeah. Stop our Mercedes once we get out of the Air Force and become in private practice. Yeah.
That's right.
Gonky.
Yes,
that's
sir.
a great segue, man. What I was actually going to ask this, and for medical, but I mean, we can encompass all that. What do you think the common aerospace medicine misconceptions are from both the civilian and the military side? You know, because I've talked about on my channel, you know, make them tell you no, because I was one of those dudes that I'm not an astronaut. I didn't have perfect vision. You know, I wasn't, you know, somebody that you'd think automatically become a fighter pilot. What do you think in today's world, the most common misconceptions are that you see from both the civilian and the military side that, you know, you want to address?
I think one of the biggest ones I'm seeing now as an AME is that, you know, there was the culture is exactly what you're describing, where it's like, hey, you know, don't tell them anything they don't ask you, you know, don't disclose that. And I think that really worked well before everything's gone digital. And now all the systems are talking to one another. And so we're seeing, I don't know if you guys heard about like the 5,000 pilots that are under investigation from the FAA.
Yeah.
They're all the folks coming from military, and, you know, there was a culture for a long time. It's like, you know, when you fill out your VA disability paperwork, you know, your incentive is to maximize your disability. You acknowledge all these conditions. When you fill out the FAA paperwork, you know, you're the healthiest guy in the room, and you don't disclose anything. And so I think for a long time that worked, and those systems didn't talk. And then now the system's digitalized, and it's pretty easy for the VA records to communicate with the FAA records and vice versa. And so when they started to do a big review of this, they saw lots of discrepancies as you'd maybe expect. And then Congress got word of it, and, you know, it became a couple specific politicians like key project was to fix this, and they were concerned about flight safety. And so they're putting lots of pressure on the FAA and giving them funding to fix this problem. And so essentially now the systems are generally always talking. And we can also, they're also, you know, when they do an audit, they can pull, you know, when controlled substance were prescribed, court records, you know, driving records, all this stuff becomes somewhat more accessible. And so the time when it was wise to maybe not disclose things, I think is past for the most part, because the quickest way I've seen to getting a denial from the FAA is to try to lie about something or not disclose things. I think in large majority of cases, when things are disclosed, you're going to get certified. You're just going to have to jump through some hoops. So there's going to be some pain. There's going to be some expense there. There's going to be some going to different evaluations and stuff. But, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's, you know, substance use stuff, DUIs, mental health stuff, PTSD, antidepressants, like large majority, 95 to 99% of people get approved, get certified.
So that's the stuff, right? What you just listed, it's not like musculoskeletal, you know, knee joint pain, stuff like that. It's mostly like mental health and drugs.
Those are the big ones. The mental health stuff and drugs are definitely, drug and alcohol incidences are the big ones. Also because they're so easy to find and track. You know, other things, cardiac things, any neurologic things, obviously, you know, if you had a seizure or loss of consciousness, unexplained loss of consciousness, even if that's like a fainting spell or head injury. Most of those, though, are going to get certified. They're just going to get to be some hoops to jump through. The musculoskeletal stuff is generally not an issue. I mean, very rare. You know, if you have a guy with such bad back pain or neck pain that they're, you know, getting injections all the time, they're requiring pain pills, they're like consulting neurosurgeons, like those people, like that might have an effect, because you can't be on certain medicines. But I mean, if most people, especially from the fighter community and pilot community, have, you know, aches and pains, and definitely like the nerve stuff from, like, you know, all the G forces, that's super common. Yeah.
I would Mover. I think you could agree. Like, even at the Navy or Air Force, I always felt my relationship with the doc was a lot more open. you know, I go to to get my first class medical. It's like, how you doing? I feel great. It's like, all right, here you go. You know, pay up on the way out. But, you know, I always felt like, at least in the military, you could almost off the record sometimes talk about some stuff, or, you know, in a workaround kind of way, to get help. You know, like I mean, we talk about this stuff on the show a lot, but like, I'm not comfortable telling my AME anything other than where do I pay or sign.
Yeah. No, I mean, everything you're saying is very accurate. And I think the FAA is aware of that and they're trying to change that. It's just different though. And, you know, being a flight surgeon, my entire career, you know, there's two, actually, I don't think I mentioned this before and you guys may or may not be aware, but there's kind of two different flight surgeons, at least in the Air Force. I'm not sure how the Navy side goes, but you have the ones that are owned by the med group, where you're reporting to another doctor somewhere in the clinic structure, the medical group. And then you have the ones that are embedded in the fighter squadrons or in the squadrons. In my entire career, I was an SME, which is the squadron medical element, the one embedded in the unit. So I was in the A-10 unit for a year, and then I was in the F-16 unit for 4 years. So my commander was the squadron commander pilot of the fighter squadron. And it's a very different type of like dynamic, right? It was usually the roll calls where I'd get the most consults, you know? You're hanging out at the roll call and everybody's like, you know, like comfort levels down, like, hey doc, like what about if a guy had this, you know? And it's cool though, because you're in the unit, you're friends with these guys, you're flying with these guys, you know, you're going on temporary deployments with them, you know, you're taking care of their family members, you are like their doc, versus like in the FAA world, the AME is just some old guy you go to once every 6 to 12 months, and all he's looked at is the person that can potentially ruin your career, you know? And so the business that I've started, the Go Flight Medicine clinic and business that I've started, I'm really trying to bring the level of care and kind of almost like concierge level of medical advice and consultation that I learned from like being embedded in the fighter squadron to the civilian aviators, because I recognize that as like a huge gap. And I think that in the end, FAA loses when pilots aren't feeling comfortable disclosing things, right? If there's someone you can talk to, and like, so I always say like, hey, flight safety is important to me. If there's something that you come to me with, and I'm concerned about, you know, your passengers, you and your family, like I don't want to be the last person that did the exam and then you have a mishap and now, you know, your wife's a widow, you know? Yeah. So flight safety is important, but at the same time, you know, there's a lot of things that are open for interpretation. And I want to also have my patients that come to me, I want them to know that I'm going to advocate for them. And I'm also going to consider not just flight safety alone, but also, you know, the fact that this is your passion, your vocation, your livelihood, it's your paycheck, you know, and try to find the balance between those things. So
yeah,
that's my approach.
Well, and it's tough, you know, like you were talking about, just continuity, right? When you go do your FAA medical, you've got to go to the website, when MedExpress, right? And do it. It doesn't, so it can talk to every system in the world to find out if I'm lying, but it's like doing a tax return. Yeah. I have to tell it, and it tells, you know, they come back and tell me if I was lying, if I forgot, you know, because it's like, go back 3 years and tell us like, I'm like, well, wait a minute, I told you this last time. Well, we need to know it again. It's like, well, how come you can't pull it from the last one I just did? And I've got to remember what I told you the last time because I forgot. It's a test. It's not. It's a test. It doesn't remember.
I think it will. I don't think that's. I don't know how intentional that is versus just like, you know, it's a government-owned system. They have because I've seen some movement. Like for example, last May they just opened it up for the first time that now we can digitally upload documents to it. Before that, everything had to be mailed in. So, Jesus. I mean, it's moving a little bit. I agree. Like that's the whole thing. I've actually provided that exact same feedback when I go to the refresher courses, when I talk to, you know, the flight surgeons above me. I'm like, hey, do you think you guys are going to do this? So like stuff gets imported in so that there's another thing is like, I can't see previous physicals that were done by different AMEs. So I always save that stuff, but I can't see it when they put it in. So it's just like, I think those are more, I don't think that this is intentional. I just think it's just a kind of a little bit of a clunky system that is slowly improving and becoming modernized, but at the speed of a federal government and not like a lean, like Silicon Valley tech company. Right.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, I'm not trying to hide anything, but dude, I don't remember 3 years ago, you know, I saw a physical therapist on the 26th, like it's so specific. But then I told my AME that year and I'm like, okay, well, I've already mentioned that. And like, whoa, you didn't talk about this. It's like, well, we already talked about it. Why am I talking
Busted.
about this again?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Good luck flying, buddy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So in the interim, we've kind of already touched on this, but do you have any advice? Because I always get these questions, and I feel like I'm maybe Gonky, you're more qualified than me. But when people are always asking, like, as a fighter pilot, or even as an airline pilot, but specifically as a fighter pilot, what do you recommend people? Like, do you have any recommendations for nutrition and fitness just to stay in peak performance, to go pull 9Gs? Is it better, like Gonky talked about, to just smoke and do Red Bulls, or is there a workout program that you recommend? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think I could recommend on air the Gonky diet and exercise and drug and alcohol plan, or I might lose my medical license. But I mean, when it comes to diet and exercise, I like to think more in like very simplistically. As far as nutrition, there's 1,000 different diets out there. Nutrition science is very challenging to even perform. I think in general, we all know what we need to do, right? We need to eat more, like kind of just whole foods, less processed foods. We definitely all probably need a little bit more fruits and vegetables in our diet. I think really also depends on what your goal is. If you're at all getting close to developing some type of metabolic disease, meaning like pre-diabetes, obesity, those types of conditions, you need a really very specific treatment plan in terms of like what you're putting in your body. If you're not in that category and you're just trying to lose weight, or maybe you're trying to bulk up, or maybe you're at risk for heart disease just based on your family history or other things, then it's gonna be a little bit different per person. As far as the exercise thing, I think it's like, you train to play on the very specific activity you're trying to train to. So in the FAA world, yeah, you probably don't need a super high degree of fitness to do that job, right? Yeah. But at the same time, you also don't want to grow unhealthy and unwell and not be able to appreciate and enjoy the last few decades of your life because you spent way too much time just sitting in a cockpit and not like actually exercising, and that increases your risk for heart attack and stroke and all these things that could impact your medical later down the line when you get into your 50s and 60s, when guys still want to fly and be healthy. For fighter pilots specifically, though, I think it does matter. You definitely want to do very specific training to help with your G performance, to help with, also just, the rare situation where you have to eject or bail and you're out, having to spend for your life too. That's always a consideration, where you need to be kind of prepared for that. And those aren't things that you can change immediately, so you should have a basic level of fitness and be, you're considered by the Air Force, one of the most elite human beings that they've invested in. And, I think that it would be a good thing to try to also maintain like a certain level of activity that would allow you to do that job as well as possible. Right.
Which part of the Air Force thinks that? Because I can tell you,
we haven't experienced
believe that we are anything other than garbage.
Not until you try to leave and they realize, like, oh, we're gonna have to train up another guy. This is expensive. Yeah.
Well, Doc, you obviously don't recommend CrossFit because you didn't say it 15 times. So good on you for not.
Yeah.
I don't recommend CrossFit. I'm not a CrossFitter myself. Are you guys CrossFitters?
No PR for me.
Okay.
I always thought it was, when I was a lot younger, I used to exercise more, but I remember in the Navy, they were like, you're not allowed to take creatine. You're not allowed to take any kind of protein supplements, any of that stuff, which I thought was crazy.
They have a whole supplement thing now. I know the Air Force does, and they allow most supplements. Yeah, there are some that that are in the kind of use with caution category, and there's just a couple that you can't, but most of them are okay. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention with the fitness thing though is I think the Air Force has done a great job with, it started off at Luke, and now it's starting to be growing into different bases where they actually are having like this kind of physical therapy, personal trainer, fitness suite of different expert level services specifically for fighter squadrons, which is really cool, I think. And that's like, guys, like that just makes so much sense. Why have we not been doing this for decades? But they're starting to do it now. I don't know if you've heard about that. Have you heard about that?
Why are you laughing? We had that.
That's what I'm laughing.
We had a chiropractor, a physical therapist, and they had a personal trainer, but we were T-38 people, so they wouldn't talk to us. So
I
it was
know,
only for the Raptor side, T-38s, you know, whatever.
No, so
yeah, see, that's Gucci.
So old Gonky is like my Navy Gonky is making fun of Air Force guys. So you'll never in a Navy or Marine Corps fighter squadron.
Never say never.
It
always starts somewhere.
That's true. I'm 99% sure today you will not find a dedicated chiropractor. What was that thing, like an $18,000 massage chair?
Oh yeah, they had 2 massage chairs.
We all used to take rides in. The Air Force body care package program was much more robust than.
And Eglin on the F-35 side had a performance psychologist.
Yeah.
Which I didn't get to go talk to, but they had a no kidding, like a sports psychologist for performance. Like, you know, hey, I've got a little bit of anxiety. Well, you can't say that word, but you know, I've got a zing, you know, which I thought was really cool. So that actually, again, with the segues, probably the most important part of this entire thing. And you are the expert, and I'm glad we have you on here every week. We talk about a mental health minute, and usually it's just something we make up or we steal from our DPH at our current squadron, because squadrons do have director of psychological health, which we think is awesome. But it's important to me because, you know, I've been down this road before, and as a flight doc on the military side and the civilian side, especially with your expertise, what do you think is the most important part about, you know, keeping your mental health good while maintaining your medical?
Yeah, that's a big question. Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that you guys do this mental health minute. First of all, just because I think it's something that a lot of times we just don't talk about. I think a lot of times as high performing males, it's like, you know, I got this. I got this. I can handle this. I'm good at stress. I'm good at dealing with stress. So just recognizing that we're all just human and that there is a breaking point. It's gonna even like the well-trained fighter pilot, although that breaking point is probably to the right of the normal curve where it would be for just your average person, there is a breaking point. And kind of getting to understand, like, where is your breaking point? Where's that point where, hey, shit, I need to get some help? You know, if you're feeling that way, you just need to get help rather than just kind of trying to just dig in deeper and not asking for assistance. And the way to do that, I think it's going to vary for each individual. You know, do you go to your squadron commander? Do you go to the flight doc? You go to someone that you trust and you know that has your best interests. Start there, and then just ask for that help, right? I've been loving doing the HIMSS program because they're some of my favorite patients, because most of these people have already reached that point. They've been dealing with for years. And, you know, all my HIMSS patients, by the time they see me, hearing what their last couple of years were like is always a nightmare. And they've gotten to the point where now they're asking for help and they're getting that help. And then on the other end, when they come back and maybe they're actually out of the cockpit for a little bit, but we get them back up, they're new people. They're reborn. Their relationships are better with their families. They're performing better in their job. They just have a new zeal for life. And seeing that whole transition in so many different people has been really rewarding for me. And that could be any of us. That could be me. You know, that could be you guys. Maybe not Gonky, because he seems like he just has
he's a golden retriever. Back type of, yeah, he's a golden retriever. Human golden retriever.
Life is so good. I don't know. What's the big deal?
I'm just happy to be here.
My tail's always wagging.
Dude. I know that's a lot of generalities, but in general, I think you just know that you have a breaking point, know what it is, and ask for help if you reach it.
So you talked about the 3 drugs, and what currently? I mean, so I've always talked about things that have helped me, you know, as far as in the squadron, just talking, there was non-medical counseling within the squadron. They started having military family life counseling actually embedded in the squadron. So you could go talk to them, and as long as you weren't a threat to yourself or somebody else, you know, it stayed confidential. It didn't go any medical records. You could just get stuff off your chest. And then, it escalates to a psychologist, psychiatrist, and it goes from there. What part in that process does it go from, this is not a threat, I'm just getting stuff off my chest, to, okay, you're not going to fly, we're going to have to ground you for X amount of time? Where have you seen that or is there one? Is it just a case by case basis?
These are great questions. And like, I think you're looking for more specifics, and it is somewhat of a protocol. So, if you're having just like, hey, I just need someone to talk to about stress or increasing resilience or helping with sleep or behaviors or things like that, that's like the lowest level. You go see a therapist. Once you get to a position where it's like, there's actually a medical condition called adjustment disorder. And it's something that's probably overused in the military or by anybody that's a pilot because of the specifics that it has less ramifications. And so essentially there's something external to you that has happened that has given you some symptoms that overlap with like depression or anxiety, right? And there's very specific definitions for that diagnosis. It can't last longer than 6 months. There's very specific types of symptoms that can or can't be part of that process. And so if you then now have gotten so severe that you're no longer meeting criteria for adjustment disorder, your symptoms have been prolonged enough or severe enough or intense enough that you need to maybe explore, like, actually, do you meet criteria for major depressive disorder? Even if it's just like there's actually even different levels of that. Major depressive disorder, like mild, moderate, severe, generalized anxiety disorder. There's different psychiatric conditions that actually have diagnostic criteria. If you meet one of those ones and you actually are going to start taking some type of treatment, like an antidepressant, like you were saying, there will be downtime. And so that's kind of like, and I've met plenty of pilots that get to that point. They're like, you know what? I've been trying to do it this way. I've been minimizing my symptoms intentionally to try to use these different modalities that won't affect my career to mean that I can continue flying. And I'm done. I'm ready to try something else. It's just not working for me. I'm unhappy in my life. And I think there's a time always when like the pilot starts to say like, I'm more than just a pilot. I want to be healthy. I want to enjoy my life. And a lot of times we see that at the end of a military career, guys that have been flying for a couple of years and they're just struggling in a lot of different physical and mental ways, but they're still trying to do it. And then they're like, hey, I need to deal with these things. And that point's going to cross differently for each person. But I mean, for the FAA and the Air Force, you can be on antidepressants and get back in the cockpit. So you get on the medicine, you do some therapy. I mean, as far as evidence for these treatments, if you have depression, the evidence suggests that cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a type of therapy combined with certain medicines, gives you the best likelihood of resolving that condition. Those two things combined. And so, yeah, I don't know if I specifically answered your question, but I think
that's awesome.
That people don't realize that there is a path to get back in. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not one and done. There's, in most cases, there is some sort of roadmap to getting back to flying, even if that involves pausing for a while to take care of whatever the problem is.
Yeah. And the pause is long though. I mean, the pause is usually 6 to 12 months, which is a long pause, if this is your career and stuff, and this is what you love. So it is a big, I mean, there's a lot of obstacles to being that person to say, hey, I need some help, versus just anybody else on the street that doesn't have to deal with, their career or their passion being impacted for anywhere from 6 months to a year or two. That's a huge ask, but it's possible.
So one thing I have seen with airlines now, which, airlines, you've got the union, you've got the aeromedical folks in the union, but airline contracts have now moved towards including mental health as part of their long-term disability plans. So whereas before, you needed something like medical diagnosis, whatever, now it's okay, you've got some kind of mental health thing going on, you get paid time off through the insurance. So I think that's awesome that they do.
Yeah, it's a big incentive
that they do that. Are you dealing with, so as the HIMSS person, you're not counseling them, you're just helping them get their medical back? Is that how it works? Or are you like kind of walking them through, who to go see and what to do? How does that
the
work?
The HIMSS AME is kind of like the equivalent of the primary care doctor for, just standard medical care. They're kind of like the quarterback. So patient comes to see me, maybe they want to get put on they're going to start an antidepressant. They're going to come, now they're going to need to go down that special issuance pathway and get that waiver. I'm kind of explaining to them the process. It can be a somewhat complicated process. There's lots of different steps and moving parts and evaluations that may be needed. So there's also like a HIMSS trained psychiatrist, if that's a requirement. There's also a HIMSS trained neuropsychologist, if that's a requirement. I have the names and numbers of all those individuals. I'm helping them set up those appointments. I'm reviewing those evaluations. I'm running a checklist, making sure that when we're ready to submit everything, we get to that point of submission as quickly as possible. And we're not going to go back and forth with the FAA and exchange a bunch of messages. And every time, those messages take months. You send something to FAA only to get a letter back saying, oh, you forgot your personal statement and you just lost 3 or 4 months. So the HIMSS AME is trying to make sure those things don't happen, and review everything. And based on, your expertise and experience, you have to also then write up your final report as well, based on everything you read of how this person's doing. And that also applies with, patients that struggle with alcohol. That's a whole another huge program where the airlines are really involved with that too. And most airlines have their own HIMSS rep within the airlines that I'm working with and coordinating with. They're sending me all the stuff and I'm reviewing it, and I'm kind of setting up the calendar and the timetable to get someone back on status and help them get there.
Can they do this virtually, or does it all have to be in your office in person? Like, is it just for people in your region that pretty much, or how does that work?
Because there's just not probably enough HIMSS AMEs, I do have a lot of patients that are located in different places. There will be an occasional in-person meeting. Usually the FAA letter will say you have to do half of your meetings with your HIMSS AME in person. And that usually coincides with their actual certification exam. I mean, you have to do the exam in person anyways. So a lot of the actual meetings can be done remotely, but when they come in for an exam, to do their annual class 1 physical where they have to, maybe get the EKG, do your analysis, check their vision, all that stuff, they physically have to be there. There are some scenarios where the specifications may be written that you need to be in person more frequently. So it kind of varies on a case-to-case basis, but I have patients all across the country.
Wow. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
I appreciate that information. This is, I mean, we talk about this every week, right? At the very least, talk to somebody, but if you're feeling at any kind of point that, hey, I can't do this anymore, 988, 911, phone a friend. Don't ever let it get to the point that, don't make a temporary problem permanent. And
yeah,
I appreciate the fact that, you do that and you've been on the channel. So awesome. Well, Doc, we are going to move on to our super chats and our topics for this evening. We appreciate all the flight doc specific stuff. It's been educational.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to talk some combat aviation again. I do a lot more of FAA stuff these days, so it's a good time. Yeah, I'll hang out and listen to some of the stories you guys are going to share.
Awesome. Yeah, man. Yeah, stick around. But we got some chats from the audience that I've been neglecting. Cluterus, which is a funny name every time we hear it. Moving Gonky, food for thought. Any chance you guys want to buy an old Warbird, getting a license and doing it? Yeah, right. Airship demos, just as a way to keep flying single seat pointing. We're going to need more than $20.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to up that a little bit higher, but yes and yes. Even if it's a 2-seater. Cal says Tomcats.
Thank you, Cal.
And that's all you need to say for Gonky's channel. Joe with the Airwolf patch says, hi guys, after a couple weeks watching delayed, too busy riding the dirt bike, just like Gonky.
That's right.
Good to be back live. Welcome back. And then Zippers Forever says, yay, finally openly admitted my PTSD. My physical was gone immediately and back then forever. So good changes for the positive. Doc, you talked about the 5,000, and I actually had somebody reach out to me that was one of the 5,000 who had an emergency revocation of all of like everything, and he has to start over. Is there a path forward to overcome that, even with the emergency revocation that you've seen?
Yeah, that's actually a good point to just bring up real briefly. With this whole 5,000 thing, I've had a couple of the quote unquote 5,000 reach out to me as well for consultation. My understanding is the FAA kind of sent out 2 different categories of letters, kind of depending on how egregious the discrepancies were between the VA records and FAA records. And so the letter received by a large majority is, hey, this is a discrepancy. You need to get it right. Kind of a slap on the wrist type thing. And those are most of the patients I've been working with. My understanding is there are some pilots that have gotten other letters that are, much more severe and will have more significant consequences. But that tends to be people that are probably hiding like really serious disease. And when the FAA looks at this, recognizes that this could potentially really be putting people at risk, versus this is just something like And I was kind of trying to game the system on, and have my cake and eat it too, so to speak. But so, yeah, most people just have to make it right, and I would definitely recommend, if it's a mental health thing, find a good HIMSS AME. If it's not a mental health thing, probably most AMEs, if you find an AME that's been doing it for a while, has a good level of expertise and is trusted, and you know them well, they'll probably be able to work you through it.
Awesome. Thank you. Gandalf the Grey, Gonky, there's your path to a single seat fighter right there. Hey, my dudes,
of those,
in the background, I just winged as a jarhead in his late 30s.
Wow, nice. That's awesome.
And I'm now in South Carolina learning to fly. Some thick 5th gen awesomeness. Make them tell you no. Hell yeah. That's helped me on numerous occasions. Can I thank you enough for that? God bless all of you.
Nice.
Hell yeah, man.
Awesome, man.
It's good to hear. And
awesome.
that was going to be our April Fool's, was that Gonky's flying Fat Amy, but
I
couldn't say it with a straight face.
I don't know.
Couldn't say it with a straight face. I did convince all of Facebook that I had sold the ZR1 today, and that is false. I did not do that. So for those that are worried, I still have the vet. I'm not going to get a Mustang. Eero says, cardiologist here. Super interesting. Thanks for doing this. And Doc, I'm the reason some of it we talked in details, because I have a lot of medical professionals that watch the show and want to hear, all that stuff. And we just, like I said, blood bad, brain good.
Right.
So MedTech says, here's another one: life sciences and medical ops at the Johnson Space Center during shuttle.
I think you missed her first comment was a shout out to Mike Barrett, who's on the ISS right now. He's a flight surgeon. And I know he doesn't remember me, but I actually remember meeting him when I did a space medicine clerkship at NASA Johnson Space Center. I met Mike Barrett. That guy is an amazing human being, and I think he's on the ISS right now practicing medicine. So,
dude, if somebody from the ISS is watching us right now, we've reached a different level. We might get those single seat fighters for the air shows after all.
Luke, stretch goals.
Says 5. Yeah, thanks, Luke.
I like that.
T Wolf Jaeger says zeolite refers to the molecular sieve bed in the obogs that takes all the not oxygen out of the air and lets the oxygen pass through into your breathing system.
Still confused. Still confused. Wait a minute.
T Wolf Jaeger says, this is a fascinating episode. I've worked on cabin pressure and ECS for 16 years and never got much of the ops perspective. I wish I had talked to more flight docs when we were in the same building. See? Doctors are our friends.
That's right.
D Stu said, would the doc think mental health issue if a pilot came to him and said, I saw a UAP and it was in the sun or Venus or a satellite or Starlink?
That actually describes me. I was on Kilimanjaro last month and I thought I saw a UFO, and I was convinced. And then I sent it out to a couple people and they're like, duh, that's the Starlink train.
Oh man.
I sent it to all these people and I'm like, look at this amazing thing I saw. I saw it in Africa and my first UAP spotting, and then I got all these articles sent back to me that was identical to the Starlink train.
Dude, they didn't hear any of that. UAP confirmed.
Wait. Where were you?
I was like Kilimanjaro. Yeah.
What the
Mount.
Yeah.
I need a map. Yeah.
Tanzania.
Last time I was on Kilimanjaro, I didn't see that. So
me neither. My hiking.
Yeah, here in Florida.
Yeah. Gregory Landowski says, diagnosed ADHD when I was 8 years old, still on ADHD meds as an adult. Schedule 2s like ADHD meds are still definite no-go for a class 3 medical. This is a common one because on the military side, it's disqualifying as well for a certain period of time. What's the deal with that?
So you have to choose. Do you want to be a pilot or do you want to be on ADHD meds? You can't have both. So if you get off the med, there's a path to get you certified, but you can't still be taking stimulants. No go pills for the civilian side.
So
wait till you're in, then get the go pills.
Is it just asthma after a certain age? So you can have ADHD up until whenever and then stop, and then how does that work?
Well, you can even have ADHD and still meet diagnostic criteria and not be treated. And what they'll make you do is you have to go do this neuropsych eval without it, and they actually will drug test you 24 hours within when you take that test to make sure you're not getting any help. There's no stimulants in your system. If you do well on that neuropsych eval, and your personal statement, you have to actually essentially tell the FAA you're never going to take these medicines again once you're certified, or if they find out that you are, then you'll lose your certificate immediately. But you can meet diagnostic criteria for ADHD. You do well without the medicines, you can actually be certified. And there's probably actually some pilots that actually are really good pilots because of some of the symptoms they have from ADHD.
I would argue we're all ADHD. There's no way to do this job. I mean, you have too much stuff to like. Yeah.
To some degree,
are changing, and I can't find the remote. John says, Doc, do you own a private aircraft? And if so, would you allow these two to fly with you?
Bad idea.
I'll get back to you on that one. But no, I don't currently own a private aircraft.
We could fly you to Kilimanjaro.
Let's do it.
Omega 11. Is that an Eagle?
That is.
I did some stupid things in the past. I went to a therapist, but I don't think there's any documentation. I still hope to fly fighters. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't shoot yourself down.
Yeah.
It really depends on the specifics there.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Yeah. Well,
there's always a chance.
Don't be
tell me there's a
that,
chance.
Yeah. Don't tell yourself no. Let some nerd at the Pentagon tell you no. Take it all the way to the top if you have to. Zippers Forever says, please do a shout out about sailor's lip, which is more common in military and aviators as pre-cancer.
Sailor's
Is that like with the dip?
Like dip?
Well, as an Air Force guy, I don't know what sailor's lip is because we're gonna have to get a Navy flight surgeon on here to talk about sailor's lip.
Although
I used to be a sailor.
Air Force guys dip because I've seen them in EOR with the piddle pack spitting into the piddle pack.
Yeah.
All right, back on track. Gonky,
I can field that one if you want.
Okay, please do.
Look at that, Doug. How are you,
Doug from the top rope?
Yeah,
it's
Doug meet Apollo, the voice of God. Doug, Apollo.
I'm not going to try too hard to pronounce actinic colitis, but the doctor might know what that means. It's a reaction to long-term sun exposure on the lower lip, and Zippers mentioned in the chat earlier that he's being treated for squamous cell carcinoma on his lower lip because he is out in the sun so much.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's probably what they're referring to. It's a precancerous lesion. It can turn into like a squamous cell cancer at some point. I guess it's called sailor's lip in the Navy, though. Yeah, you're probably right. Probably from dipping or from being out in the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Gonky. There was a rather
Eagle versus flanker.
Yeah, kind of a big article there.
Will the debate ever stop? Right. All right. So Russia's Su-27 flanker can probably beat the F-15 in dogfight. I love the confidence in this one, man. Yeah. So the article is pretty. I mean, it's paper BFM, right? Put all the stats down on paper. So yes, the flanker is a. And by the way, shameless plug. You can go to my channel and watch me fight the flanker, not in an Eagle, but I digress. No, it talks about basically how the flanker is a very formidable airplane, right? It's I don't know, when I was growing up as a young Hornet guy, I always thought it was like the Russian air superiority fighter. So like their version of the F-15. Yeah, well, not everything the Russians deploy today is fancy or effective. It's good enough, right? So, I spent 10, 11 years studying flankers and fulcrums and never got to see any until I got out and I went overseas, and I did actually get to see them up close, talk to the pilots, fight them, fly with them. And they have the limitations and they have their strengths just like Western fighters do. So, and the article here talks about the flanker is very fast, very powerful. And it's actually multi-role, which the Eagle is not. I would argue that the Eagle's kill ratio kind of speaks for itself when you're talking air to air. They don't talk about BVR or dogfight, but both airplanes have been around for decades, and there's so many different variants of it. So the Su-27 is the older version. The F-15C, I would argue, is probably the older version of the Eagle now that they've been upgraded. But we've talked about it before, right, Mover? It really depends on the pilot, and I always used to say I'd rather be lucky than good any day, right? So if I come to the merge with a flanker, I'll take luck over skill any day. Now, similar pilot, similar day, it's still anybody's ball game because they're both very capable fighters. What do you think, Mover?
Well, I mean, you've got the alpha of the flanker.
True.
And
the Su-27 is not thrust vectoring. It can pull high alpha,
but it's
not
got the
thrust
high Aka, high alpha thing, you know. The Eagle jet struggled against everything I've flown. So
yep, true.
Now I would still probably prefer to be in an American aircraft unless someone's offering me to fly in flanker right now, in which case, you know, look, I'm loyal to whoever lets me fly their airplane.
What if you were in it didn't say, but what if you were in an EX Eagle?
Oh, then dude, I take the EX all day.
See,
long.
that's what I'm saying, right? So
all
you read this article
all day long.
Yeah, right. So the old Eagle didn't have the Gucci digital flight controls.
Right? Well, these articles are dumb because everybody thinks that everything's a dogfight because that's all they've ever seen is Top Gun. Yep. There goes the flight doc. He's gone. He's not even.
I gotta fix the blinds.
This is like when T-Bear wandered off that time. I love it. Yeah, dude, I would say, I mean, American trained fighter pilot every day of the week. That's who I'm going to take, you know, but like you said, man, what are the conditions?
Well, Doc, when you were at the F-16 unit in Italy, right?
Yeah.
Did they ever do any dissimilar fighting against Russian built airplanes, flankers, MiGs? And I'm sure you listen to the guys talk about it.
I mean, TDY we did. Yeah, we'd go to Bulgaria, we'd go to Romania.
Right. It's right. You win some, lose some. It kind of depends on the new guy, the old guy, the good guy, the not so good guy, right?
I don't know the specifics of who won most of the time. I just assumed our guys did.
That's what they told the doc. Doc's like, who won?
I did. Yeah.
You need a mental health.
10% true, right? 10% true.
Yeah. I was offensive till I hit the merge.
Yeah. I was slightly less offensive. What do you mean? I was slightly less offensive, Doc. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, did they ever so I assume there's a couple 2-seat F-16s.
Oh yeah, we had 3 in my squadron.
So I guess you never got to go for a ride in one during a dissimilar fight against anything Russian.
I'm trying to remember if I was actually. I think the flying when we were TDY is a little bit more challenging. I think just because you're a lot more busy. I know I got to fly quite a bit when we did Arctic Thunder, which was a big kind of massive multinational exercise up in Norway and Sweden. And I'm trying to think we definitely engaged with lots of different aircraft. I can't think specifically about like the MiGs or like the Sus. I'm just trying to think about that. But
sorry, dude.
I was gonna say, Gonky, before you get the angry comments, I'm gonna say it depends. The question becomes to what's the loadout and what's the range? Like BVR, beyond visual range, is a different thing than within visual range with high off-bore sight weapons. Yeah. You know, are we shooting Archers and 9X or Pythons? Who's got what? If we're talking guns only, that's a totally different thing. So that's what it's just going to depend. There's no set answer, and that is across the board. On any given Sunday, it's going to depend.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I get questions like this all the time, and it's you always say, well, it depends, and it always seems like a cop out, but you know, it really does depend. I mean, the flanker for what it is an amazing airplane, and the Eagle is an amazing airplane.
I see, if you say guns only, I see this 2-circle across each other at the deck, and it's whoever gets bored first.
I think if it's guns only, flanker's got the advantage.
You think so?
Yeah, because the alpha and it's got.
I'm saying 2-circle.
Oh, like 2-circle.
Yeah. If they force it 2-circle, 1-circle. Yeah, I think it's like a Hornet. You know, I think it's a Hornet with more thrust.
Yeah, dude. There's not the thing with the flanker too. It's actually, the Eagle was designed really like late 60s, early 70s, and the flanker was more of a 80s. So there's about a 10-year gap in time there. So it is. Even the Su-27 has a really good flight control system, which, like we said earlier, the Eagle doesn't have. Like the EX has a digital flight control system, and the original Eagle I don't think has a full digital flight control. So I don't think it has a digital flight control system at all.
That much, dude. I think it's still gonna.
I think it does, dude.
I think I don't know. All right. From the audience, Angie says Kilimanjaro. That's on my bucket list. That's the best, fastest way to get to high elevation, avoid altitude sickness. I'm heading to Cusco in a few days. It's a very specific question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing is there's no rapid decompression on the mountain. It's a slow slog. But when you get up to 20,000, it's still painful. Yeah. You just gotta
be honest. Did you take a helicopter most of the way up there? Or did you? I mean,
no, we did it in 5 days. It was fun. It was good.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Seth says, love you guys as always. Hate to contradict, but aren't the stealth bomber crews taking stimulants on a schedule? Well, they all do. We got go no go.
Even the Navy.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole counter fatigue management program, but it's super tightly controlled. But yeah, there's a program that exists that allows pilots to use stimulants and sleep aids to optimize performance in the military.
I think he might have been confused when you said you can't keep taking the ADHD meds, which is different than the go no go. Like, and it's a per use thing, right? It's not here's your go pills, take them whenever. It's like, okay, you're on the night page. If you need this, break glass in case of emergency kind of deal.
Yeah, and I mean, just a caveat, I was specifically talking about the FAA's policy when we were talking about that. So I was talking about the FAA's policy. You can't be on stimulants, take stimulants, be treated for ADHD, and be a pilot medically certified by the FAA.
Gotcha. Yeah, it happens. Sometimes people catch half of it. And Savage Viking says, I'm here to represent the petite country of Turkey. Doc, in case you're wondering, Turkey and now Sweden
huge country
hate us. And Canada too now, actually. So currently we are on a world war with three other countries. Gonky started it because
us being you two specifically, or
no, me and Gonky. Yeah.
No, but here's the thing.
Now I'm gripped into that. So I have two whole countries against me as well.
You're neutral. You're neutral.
Oh yeah.
I'll be Switzerland in this.
Yeah, you're neutral. We've only pissed off Sweden, so they're not neutral anymore. Yeah. So Gonky cyberbullied Turkey.
I did not,
because he called them a small country, and then we started talking about Canada in a different episode. He called them a small country too, and they politely
no. I said smaller.
And I pissed
10% true.
Yeah, I pissed off Sweden because I used the nomenclature that Saab uses and called it the Gripen. And everybody's like, Gripen. It's Gripen. It's not Gripen. Gripen. So very mad. And now I will never say Gripen except for that's a waiver for what I just said.
Yeah.
I'll never do that again. Plexi says, look at that sexy flanker Gonky.
Yeah, Plexi. I put a picture of me standing next to a Su-30 and Plexi's like, oh, that's the best looking 4th gen jet ever. I'm like, I don't think so, but I'm biased.
All right. Moving on. I hate when we pick articles where I don't know how to say the words. Because
Venezuelan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure this is a tough one.
This is like it's all in Spanish, dude. And I hit the translate from Spanish by Google. Importante. FANB neutralizes aircraft which was declared hostile for not having a flight plan or authorization from air traffic institutions to operate in the air. You didn't have a flight plan, man. They took them out. Here's a video.
Wow.
Here's a video which doesn't show much, but it does show that this is like an A model Viper. And can y'all hear that? There's nothing to hear, but it's too loud. Is that the missile?
Oh, dude, that's a smoking hole in the ground.
Yeah. Here we go again. All right. Okay, that's just where it crashed. I thought that was like a smoke plume from the missile. But yeah, so that's their proof that they shot it down. And
did they ever say what it was?
It's like a little Cessna or something. It doesn't really say what the.
It's a student pilot who got lost.
And then they showed this wicked. Look at that tail, dude. I mean, that's a good looking.
Yeah, that's some good art.
That's a good looking airplane.
That's
not gonna lie.
That's some good art. That is, yeah.
Straight up communist, but
So Cessna versus F-16, that's probably one you guys could actually provide a definitive answer on, not being it depends.
Well, this is not their first time.
It depends.
Yeah, it depends.
Well, there was the Bronco that they was that Venezuela, some South American country took out a Bronco with a Viper where they strafed it. But that's harder than you'd think. I mean, that's not easy to strafe a slow moving target like that.
That's high pressure too, man. What if you empty the gun and you miss every time?
Man, are they using Gonky? He's wanting to know if they're using your phone to record this. But anyway, figured we'd discuss this. There's not a whole lot to talk about because I don't speak their language, but it's Venezuela.
Yeah.
And so we're not friendly with the Venezuelans. So the F-16 is not exactly getting tender loving care in the form of upgrades and avionics. So these airframes, it's probably one of very few that are still serviceable out there.
Yeah. Well, a lot of other countries, man, the military controls a lot of the airspace. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of civilian flying going on.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Drug runners and Venezuela, weren't they talking about a thing with Brazil? Isn't there like a conflict brewing with Venezuela and
I don't know.
Doc, you're a man of the world.
I don't know. Yeah. On your way to kill Majaro.
I'm not gonna win that Jeopardy question.
This is what leads to cyberbullying where we say things.
Yeah. No. Brazil's military reinforces border with Venezuela. A convoy of military trucks and armored vehicles set off to Brazil's northern border on Friday to reinforce the presence. This was back in February. But in December of 23, Brazil deployed troops along its border with Venezuela in response to the Venezuelan government's plans to include an area controlled by Guyana in its territory. The Essequibo region, rich in oil, has been in dispute since the 19th century. So yeah, Hoover's a man of culture.
Strong work.
Sure.
Yeah, I knew things.
If you're from Louisiana.
Well, listen, I watched that movie with the guy that smuggled with Tom Cruise.
Yeah, that was a good movie. American
He's
Made?
in Louisiana. Yeah.
Was it American Made?
Yeah, T-Bear was there on his autopsy. They cut his genitals off.
Oh.
Yeah, they do that thing down there. But anyway, they either do that or they shoot you down in a Viper.
Yeah.
But it seems a little extreme. Usually we try to talk and wing rock and pop some flares or whatever, but they're just like, you know what? Here's our kill.
Dude, they probably did that. I mean, they probably did that, right? Try to get their attention. And then
you give them a lot of credit, dude.
Well, you would hope. I mean, it's not that hard to do. Yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I got. They could be mercenaries.
Trying to be nice to other countries, Mover. Throw me a bone, dude.
Why are you picking the comp? Like, you're mean to Canada. You're mean. I mean, like, of all the people to be mean to. Well, I guess you're right. Venezuela. I wouldn't piss off a South American country either. Speaking of people you want to piss off, Gonky, why don't you bully Putin?
No, dude, I don't bully Putin. But he does say F-16 bases in the west part of Ukraine are going to be military targets. So there's not really a whole lot to this article. I mean, we know that Ukrainians are preparing to get the F-16, and Putin's saying with the nuke capability, and with the enhanced capabilities, high speed, better weapons, that they're going to be legitimate targets, which I would argue, no kidding, because you're kind of in a conflict. So you would think that any military asset would be a viable target. I think it's kind of a crazy article for Business Insider to put out, because I mean, I would expect them to be targets. Am I crazy, Mover, or what? Right?
Yeah, I don't. We have said that from the beginning, and remember when that strike came out, and the speculation in the news was that Ukraine had launched a strike from one of the countries. I forgot which country it was, Bulgaria, somebody, and their information minister immediately came out and said, no, we're not launching anything out of here because we don't want to be associated with that. because you're right. It's a NATO escalation. Nobody wants to be the one that, fires the shot heard around the world.
Right.
And next thing you know, it is not just Ukraine versus Russia with all of our, material and whatnot. It's actual boots on the ground, and it's a hot conflict with the rest of the world. So, but I mean, now he's drawn a line in the sand and saying, if we're going to start attacking these things, which it's saber rattling, he's got to know that, NATO is not going to sit by and just let them attack NATO bases.
Yeah. And I mean, and I'm sure it's not going to be like day one. Okay, target them all. I would hope not. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Like I said, it's a conflict, and I mean, there's real lead flying, and I would totally expect them to be military targets. I would think it'd be crazy if Ukraine didn't expect that.
Well, it's not the Ukraine, it's the country that's hosting them, right? So like, I would be surprised if where they're training, they're suddenly getting shot down in that country, unless they're directly striking from that country, which I don't see happening. So, I mean, it's saber rattling.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's I've said it many times. Like, it'd be nice to read a couple articles of de-escalation instead of escalation. Because I mean, saber rattling is escalatory in nature, I'd argue.
You should call them a small country.
No. Russia's definitely not a small country.
Well, so I mean, like, let's take Poland for example. We did an article about this last week, right? And Poland was launching Vipers to go up to intercept drones and missiles. Dude, they're already ready. It's not like these countries, are like us, where they're just kind of sitting around going, "Oh, this sucks." I mean, if you're a NATO ally that's training Ukrainian fighter pilots, they're watching and they're ready. They're not just going to let their bases get attacked. They're going to launch the alert fighters. They're going to launch whoever to go out there and handle business. And if it does escalate, it's not going to go the way that Putin thinks it's going to go. It's going to be a massive brawl. So
maybe,
yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe.
Back to the kids at home. Clitoris. There you go, Gonky.
Thanks,
donation
man.
for your Flanker Museum airshow piece.
I'll take it.
Dora Meme says, call it the Jazz 39 Gripen. Damn it, I did it. I just read from the teleprompter. Gonky is cyberbullying Venezuela now. Dude, Gonky, you've been in a bad mood today, dude. You need
Confirmed.
See, the doc even says you're in a bad mood.
I've been diagnosed a habitual cyberbullying.
Where's the golden retriever that's just happy about everything? You've just been cranky today.
Yeah, but at least he's punching up. He doesn't go after individuals. He goes after entire nation states.
That's right.
Gonky's going to get us into World War III. Hey, so this is an interesting one, Gonky, because I personally don't understand the politics necessarily, but we could talk about it a little bit. So Denmark strikes deal to offload 24 F-16 fighter jets to Argentina. Amidst their fleet replacement, Denmark finds buyer for surplus jets in Argentina. They've sealed the deal for 24 jets. They're going to obviously upgrade to the F-35. They had 43 between 1980 and 1997. So that's a lot. But the entire fleet is going to be F-35s, and they've decided to sell 24 to Argentina, which the Danish jets are actually upgraded. They're midlife upgrade Vipers. They're not just, the original ones. But in a collaborative effort led by Denmark and allied nations, Ukraine Air Force is receiving F-16 to equip the Ukrainian Air Force. Gonky, did we talk? Because I've gotten, and the reason I wanted to bring this up is because people have sent this to me. They're like, I can't believe Denmark's doing this. Is it because they're upset because they think that all 24 jets should go to Ukraine? Or is there something against Argentina? Or is there something that I'm missing altogether?
I don't know, man. It might be a combination of a little bit of everything.
Because, the Ukraine piece, they can only, you can't throw, unlimited amounts of jets because they have to have places to keep them. They have to have maintainers. They have to have the infrastructure. You can't just go, here's, all of our jets. Good luck. Second, they're still a country with a budget, and they have to sell and get money and fund their F-35 opportunity. And third, the U.S. controls exports. The State Department, when you buy an F-16 from the U.S., it comes with conditions, and the conditions are you can't just go willy-nilly give them to anybody you want. The State Department has to approve. That's part of the process of having these aircraft. So some of that might fall on what the State Department's allowing them to do with the F-16s, but I don't know. I mean, is there some history that I'm missing? Doc, do you know anything about this? Is this in your wheelhouse at all?
Definitely not my wheelhouse. No, I'm learning a lot from you guys here, but definitely not my area of expertise. Yeah, maybe I should go to Air War College, and then I'll have some answers for you.
Yeah, Mover. I mean, if I was a betting man, it's all money in politics. I'm
Googling it. I'm like, well, their national football team doesn't like Argentina.
That sums it up right there.
There's a lot of soccer. Danish Argentine citizens that immigrated from Denmark and reside in Argentina. Danish immigration was intense between the 19th century and early 20th century. I don't know specifically why it would anger them so much, other than the Ukraine thing. And that, to me, like I said, that piece is, what did the State Department allow them to do? What did, what is Ukraine capable of accepting at this point? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before, like you said. I mean, if you have all these countries like, hey, I'll donate, you get the, there's several countries, right, that are looking to donate F-16s, but how much can Ukraine actually handle? And I'm sure they're not all the same. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Somebody said it's the Falklands War. But I mean,
well,
that's 40 years.
Yeah, early 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything more recent than that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Gonky.
You want to say it for me?
The Gripen.
Yeah, breaking news, right? Sweden considers supplying Gripen. You can send all hate to me. Fighter jets to Ukraine. So, you read the article, and it's actually more of a, it talks about basically Sweden's commitment to help the Ukraine, right? So it says Sweden's opened up the possibility of supplying its advanced Gripen fighter jets to Ukraine. And we've talked about it a little bit, Mover, in the past, about how really I think the Gripen would probably be a better fit for the Ukraine, given, the types of airfields they have when compared to the F-16. The other thing it mentions in the article, it talks about, the capabilities of the Gripen would greatly enhance, such a good looking jet, would greatly enhance their air warfighting and ground support capabilities against the Russians. But I didn't know this, but Sweden is also putting money, I think it said 30 million euros to also fund F-16s going to Ukraine. So I don't know, in my mind, I mean, we just talked about Ukraine's capacity to handle F-16s, a brand new airframe they have no experience with, Western fighter versus a lot of the Soviet stuff they used to have. But I mean, I don't know, what do you think? I mean, would two different Western fighters muddy the water and actually slow them? That's what I was thinking about when I was reading this article, because I mean, can you imagine they're probably on the ropes just trying to get their head wrapped around the F-16, and I'm talking, maintenance, the whole 9 yards, and then it's like, hey, we want to help with the Gripen, and that's its own logistics and training and capabilities. What do you think?
Gripen's a great aircraft.
Yeah,
and awesome. It's ideally suited for their situation because of the ability to land, now to some degree, right? They're not just going to land on a dirt road, but something that's a highway that's somewhat cleared off and stuff like that. Was that the Gripen E I thought that was the difference. Was this one? Whereas before we've talked about the Gripen C, which is still capable, but when you start talking about the Gripen E, which has, you know, the
PISA,
that, and it's got all the data link, and it's got all the digital stuff, and the ability to integrate with some of the it does say state of the art, so they may be talking about the Gripen E, but
JAS 39.
Well, no, it's the E. The E is the one you want.
Yeah, it doesn't specifically say.
But this was the difference from other articles I've seen where it was talking about more of the off the factory brand new jets versus, you know, hand-me-downs from somebody else, which is a totally different scenario. So that in and of itself, having newer airplanes, less life on the airframe, less life on the engines, that could be a really big deal and a big game changer in general.
Yeah. You're saying airplanes that don't have any existing issues.
Right. I mean, you're not using it as a spare bird.
Like the trashy Aussie F-18s.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I've always said at this point, I mean, if you're on the ropes against Russia, you take what you can get and you run with it. But I don't know. I'm with you, man. I think the Gripen would be better for them, but that's just what Gonky thinks, and who cares?
Yeah. No, I think it's always good.
Yeah. I don't know. Side note, while I was kind of researching this Gripen thing, I ran across an article. There was I think it's the same.
Yeah. Well, before you do that, let's say goodbye to Apollo. He's we've held him long enough while we try to figure out our stuff. But Apollo, dude,
yeah, thank you,
for
man,
being on the show. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for all
the information. It's been super fun.
And we'll put all your how to find you in the description and stuff, so people can get help from you if they need it.
Yeah, I'll get you guys. I don't know if you guys do like show notes. I'll get you guys a couple things for some of the things we talked about. And yeah, I wish I could hang around. I just got some stuff going on, but this kind of reminds me of like the medical journal clubs we used to do during residency. You guys just going over like papers and stuff. I love it. And I'm learning a ton. So I appreciate you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, man.
See you guys.
Right.
See you, Paulo.
See you.
The next time.
Awesome. Gonky, sorry, what were you looking up?
Yeah, I was just saying, it actually brought it up at the end of the article. It was they did a interview of a Marine Corps exchange type, and his opinion was similar to ours, that the F-16, he called the F-16 a prima donna as a fighter jet, and he thought that kind of like you were talking about, it's an awesome airplane, but it requires a higher level of care. And, you know, Gripen I think would better fit the bill. And it was nice to see another fighter pilot on record saying what we were talking about.
Well, I mean, again, it depends on if it's new or not. You know, if it's a newer airplane or, you know, and how many, you know, if you're only going to get 4, you know,
well, yeah, that's a good
24. You know,
yeah, that's a good point. And then how fast can they build them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what their capacity is, how many, you know, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that.
T Wolf says Poland, Europe's Texas, the lone honey badger state. Which would you rather fly, B-17 or B-24? Says Seth.
Dude,
neither really.
I'll take the B-17, even though I know the B-24 is better.
Yeah. Joe says, Mover, I can't believe you haven't ranted about the Air Force cracking down on calling the F-16 Viper April Fools. Not familiar with that one. Blake says, when the guest learns things and enjoy being here, you're doing it right. Yeah. All good. Moving on, the F-117 was certified. This is like the conspiracy theory, right? Why? So, as we know, the KC-46 has been, all kinds of problems. But the Air Force has now decided we're going to certify the F-117 Nighthawk, Skid's old airplane, which has come back from the dead more recently. And it's on track to certify the F-117 by the end of March 24. When was this article? 325. So, I mean, it obviously has already happened. So Andrew Hunter said that as a receiver for air refueling during testimony to the House Armed Services Committee March 12th, but it's been retired since 2008 with less than 45. The Air Force intend to maintain these assets, extending to 2034 to maintain their stealth characteristics. In addition, they're going to get Mombat's E-2D B-21 set to retire the A-10, but they're still going to certify it. It's got the KC remote vision system, so the boomer's not actually looking at what they're doing. They've got the remote. It was developed by Rockwell Collins, was found to be unreliable in certain lighting conditions and exhibited motion discrepancies with real life. And that's the extent. I mean, it's really not all that advanced. I would say as far as the why, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, it may just be a proof of concept. You know, you're certifying various things, you know, in case you need it. They're still using this aircraft for red air. It may have certain characteristics for air refueling that they find desirable for future platforms, that they're like, hey, we need to, you know, make sure it works for this. It could just be the fact that the F-117 is still around. You know, they're using it in various capacities. Some that we know, some that we don't know. A lot of test, a lot of, I mean, it's a cool airplane. It's, you know, one of the originals. So,
yeah, you know, when I read through that article, and what surprised me is it said the A-10 failed the refueling test, right, with the KC-46 because it didn't have the what I say, it didn't have the thrust required to.
Oh yeah,
to
because it's the speed.
But then it said the KC-135 could do it. So I don't know, mover, like
yeah, it does. It says the A-10 failed the certification test. Aircraft, along with several others, was unable to generate enough thrust to connect the boom's nozzle to the aircraft receptacle. According to Hunter, U.S. still has enough KC-135s. That's what it is. So,
sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's still, you know, I mean, it's a matter of speed and.
Well, I never tanked Air Force style, but like in the F-16, don't you hold a position and the boom operator flies the boom? Is there any point to where like you're supposed to like nudge it a little bit?
Because you have it's over. I mean, the A-10 might be different, but with Viper, you'd have no idea. I mean, you just basically fly to the position, but that's a function because the A-10 often has to toboggan. So they have to do the descent and climb and do the descent and climb because it doesn't have the speed.
Okay.
Like our speed in the F-16 was 310 knots.
Yeah.
You can't, like if the tanker's got a certain speed, it's got to refuel at. It can't go that slow. The only way to do it is to do that toboggan. So especially when it's heavy. So the certification failure may just be a matter of altitudes versus speeds versus, you know, because it's not like if you're 10,000 feet, you got enough thrust to do that. But obviously 10,000 feet tanking is not ideal.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of crazy. And then I didn't realize, man, I guess they retired the F-117 in 2008. Has it been that long?
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize apparently all the KC-10s are going away.
Oh yeah. September.
They're just talking about the KC-135. Like, holy crap.
Yeah. That's pretty wild that the old girl is still here, you know?
Yeah. It outlasted. Yeah. But no, I don't. A lot of people will be like, well, you know, what is the deal? And it's just a test thing, right? So you're just trying to certify an aircraft that may be useful for other stuff. And in their program requirements, they've decided that the F-117 needs to be one of the things that it can refuel. Now, could that be a test bed for the next generation fighter? Maybe. Could it be the test bed? Like, we don't know. I mean,
no
way to know.
I think it's wild either way. I didn't even know I honestly didn't even know we were still flying any of them.
Yeah. Gonky.
Yes.
We just talked about this last week. We were all excited about the KAI folks, and now not as great a news coming out of there.
Yeah, I mean, dude, like any fighter production, it's like they have a goal, right? So South Korea cuts initial KF-21, I can't pronounce that, production by half. They were going to make 40, now they're going to make 20. I think it's such a cool looking little jet, and I I didn't realize that they were still flying F4s and F5s. So this will probably be quite a significant leap for them. So it talks about cutting the order in half. They want to have this thing ready in the next, I don't know, about 10 years or so. And then it talks about the financial woes. So they paired up with Indonesia to help share the cost and the development of this airplane. And I guess it says there's, despite recent success in flight tests and tech implementations, the program's encountered hiccups due to financial issues with Jakarta. A total 114 Indonesian engineers working on the project left South Korea in 2021 after Indonesia failed to pay them. But 32 of the workers eventually rejoined the program. Sounds like the Air Force Reserve is running this program, dude. Both countries, have reaffirmed their commitment to the program. But like I said, all joking aside, man, it just seems like, I mean, a modern fighter. Sorry, go ahead.
It says right there, 1 trillion rupees.
Yeah, which is what
700 and whatever. Doug scrolled up on us.
Yeah,
746 million US, I think is what it says. 700 and something.
Yeah,
that's how much they still owe, because we talked about that last time. $746 million.
That's a chunk
1
of change.
trillion. Yeah, well, that's part of the problem.
Yeah, that's
8-year extension. That's the 2030s, dude.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, knocking on $1 billion. That'll slow you down. That'll slow you down a little bit. But like I was saying, I mean, man, these modern fighters are so expensive and complicated. It requires so much engineering and testing and time. It's like it almost seems like, other than what the B-21, nobody can stay on schedule. And it's not a fighter.
Well, yeah, if the B-21 stays on schedule, that's this thing was doing well. Like, it was blazing through. It was 2015, right? 2015, even 9 years by modern standards is great. And it was doing air refueling tests very recently. But as many pointed out on that video, when the rubber meets the road is when you start doing operational testing. Can it deploy weapons? Can it drop bombs? Can it do whatever? If it even is going to drop bombs, it may just be air superiority or whatever, not a pound for air to ground. But can it do all those things in general? And then once it gets to that point, can it continue? The F-35 had a lot of issues with the production side of things. Once it got approved, it had all those issues, and now we still see issues with engines and controls, and not flight controls, but like engine controls. All the stuff that's happening now is stuff that could still happen later on, but we were pretty impressed with just the timeline it's made so far. I still think, and it's too long in the modern world. Like 9 years it should have been, we should have fighters flying in squadrons.
I agree.
It's silly that
there's a lot of red tape.
It's silly that we're going the wrong way, right? It's like the bridge, the Baltimore Bridge, Francis Scott Key. They talked about they built that thing in 5 years, and now they're coming out and saying, well, if we rebuild it, it'll take 10. And it's like, how is it taking longer? Like, why is modern time so much more difficult? And what it boils down to is bureaucracy and regulation and red tape, and who's getting what kickback and all that stuff. I mean, lobbyists.
Yeah,
That's
you're right.
I mean,
it's crazy.
That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know either, man. Do we have anything from the at home real quick? Do we? We got one. We got the one. Isn't Argentina a small country, Gonky?
No says. Comment. Mover, what do you think?
It is the smallest of countries.
I think Joe says it's a small country.
All right. So this happened March 12th. And somebody thought it was a big conspiracy that we didn't cover it, which there's not a whole lot to say, but there is a video.
I haven't seen this, man.
So on March 12th, the LCA Tejas crashed. This is the Indian Air Force's fighter.
Oh.
Jaisalmer. But anyway, it crashed.
Oh, wow.
And the dude jumped out. It was an operational training sortie.
Oh,
and
man.
They fanned him. And he said he lost an inch of height.
Is he wearing shades?
He is.
Okay.
And it luckily nobody was killed.
Yeah. Holy cow.
I mean, it's kind of small wreckage, but I guess that makes, if that's part of it, if it's more into the building.
Yeah. Well, like you said, man, good thing nobody was killed. The footage that
doesn't say anybody was killed.
Yeah. Does it say like what happened? I mean,
it says a Tejas light combat aircraft of the Indian Air Force crashed on Tuesday during an operational training sortie.
Yeah.
The pilot ejected safely. That's it. That's the story.
Yeah. Well, I don't. There's not a whole lot to pull out of that one, other than thankfully nobody was hurt. I mean, at least as far as we know. I mean, the seat works as advertised, which is good. Yeah,
so it's just so we're clear on what this thing is. It's early 1980s. In 1983, government India established the LCA project with the initial goal to develop a new light combat aircraft to replace the MiG-21s. Long-term re-equipment plan, 1981. So, wow, I mean, that's an old program for us to have very little. You want to talk about long-term? Prototype testing began in 2003.
It looks like a Mirage, man.
Yeah.
Wow. That's actually a good-looking airplane.
Well, so in second half of 2012, it was grounded over for 3 months over the ejection system that had to be modified.
Fixed it.
Resume flight test. Yep, looks like it works.
Fixed it. Yeah.
On 15 April 2023, it received a flight clearance certificate for the aircraft mounted accessory gearbox bearings and power takeoff shaft. So they've had upgrades over the year. It's got an ESA radar.
That's awesome.
With a unified electronic suite.
It's just single engine, right? One engine?
Yeah, just a little single engine fighter.
Yeah. I bet that thing's fun to fly.
It just doesn't seem like it's on 28 March 2024, the first production series Mark I aircraft conducted its inaugural flights. So this was in test because this happened before this.
Well, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's got fly-by-wire. It's got a jet engine,
pointy nose, afterburner, and it can shoot.
So it has participated in exercises. 2018, the entire fleet of Tejas Mark I aircraft presented in the 2018 exercise. This was their largest air exercise. It's got high off-bore sight, close combat Python 5 in the R-73.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yep.
They're saying in the comments here, it's got the F404 GE engine.
Yep. Wow. They participated in Desert Flag 8, 5 Tejas and 2 C-17 held in the UAE. And then they test fired the Astra BVR missile. And then 2023 plans revealed to deploy the first batch of the Mark 1A in Nal Air Base. And then 26 January 2024, on the 75th Republic Day of India, took part in a parade fly past. So, but dude, that's just a long drawn out time.
Yeah.
They're talking about exporting it to Botswana, Egypt, Nigeria. There was a failed bid from the Argentine Air Force. Australia, Malaysia had indicated interest.
Yeah.
They decided not to. Philippines, Sri Lanka, UAE, and the United States sent an RFI for it. Navigator.
Really?
From the Navy.
From the
From
Navy?
the Navy. Yeah.
There's no naval variant, right?
Well, yeah, there is. But they offered it as a lead-in fighter trainer version of the HAL Tejas to replace the T-45.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I
As
don't know.
one incident, 12 March 2024, Tejas from number 18 Squadron of the Indian Air Force crashed during an operational training sortie. Pilot ejected safely. No one was harmed. The crash was the first in its operational history of around 8 years since its maiden flight, 2023.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's the Tejas Mark 1 was the single-seat operational variant, 16 aircraft. So it is IOC. There's a Tejas trainer and the Tejas Mark 1. So the Navy looked at buying this thing, the U.S. Navy.
That's wild. That's wild because it's a Delta wing.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, I don't know if that thing is carrier capable or carrier landing on the field or FCLP capable. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. It's good looking. I'm superficial. I like the way it looks.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Awesome. Well, moving on to your stuff, Gonky. But before we do that,
yes, sir.
Someone wants to say hello.
Uh-oh. Right on time, dude.
Actually, she's not, because she showed up at 8:30 and I didn't do the Lunacam because we had a guest. Figured that would be too disruptive. So this is her second attempt at telling me it's past time.
I love it.
Our final topic for tonight: the Air Force wants the next generation air dominance fighter by the 2030s, which gutsy. That's ambitious.
Yeah, I don't, the U.S. Air Force wants NGAD fighters ASAP. And Mover, you put out, we talked about this before. You put out a video about like the Raptor still kind of being in its prime. And, we talked about the Eagle earlier, and it's crazy that, we're still flying Eagles. They're talking about retiring the Raptor, which was supposed to replace the Eagle, but it never fully replaced the Eagle. And now the Air Force, at least based on this article, is full bore. They want 6th gen. They're throwing tons of money at. So it says the
$3 billion.
Yeah, the budget request nearing $3 billion to counter China's military expansion. And they're hoping that funding boost helps them achieve their goals of, whatever they're going to call this thing, the F-24 or 5, whatever, by the 2030s, which, man, I think you nailed it with that's super aggressive based on all the things we've been talking about as far as developing airplanes. I just, and I'm still like, as far as, what exactly is sixth gen? And it kind of sounds, like there's definitely going to be some loyal wingman or unmanned drone kind of technology. They have some fancy names for it that I can't remember. It's in the article, but I forgot where it's at.
And the Navy is also working on its own, but not the same one.
Yeah. And that, that drives home the kind of whatever. I think everybody the F-35 was a great experiment in like what doesn't work as far as one airplane for all the branches. And which, people will be like, wouldn't it be way cheaper and better if the 6th gen jet was Navy and Air Force? And the answer is no, because there's just, it's a different mission. Yeah. They operate. Yes, they fly pointy nose airplanes that shoot down stuff and blow up things on the ground, but it's a different service. It's a different mission. So, will NGAD on the Air Force side make it in 2030? I don't know. They're throwing another $3 billion at it to try to juice the program. It says here at the bottom of the article that Congress has capped defense spending at, I think, just shy of $1 trillion. I think what comes after $1 billion, $1 trillion. So, I mean, we're getting up into some crazy, crazy numbers here. And I like that line there. The Air Force intends the NGAD to replace its aging fleet of F-22 Raptor stealth fighter jets. The Pentagon expects NGAD to come with a rather hefty price tag of $300 million per aircraft. So
they've given up on being cheap. They've just said,
Well, so I mean, I was just thinking, the Raptor is 20 years old, which we've mentioned this before. That's not really old. I would I would argue there's still a lot of life left in the Raptor. And then the $300 million a piece. I mean, okay, so you could, in 1986 dollars, you could buy 100 Tomcats. That would get you 600 Phoenix missiles going down range. It's like, I don't know, man. The numbers are crazy, and they have a very ambitious goal. I don't know. Do you think they'll make 2030s?
Well, 2039 is still 2030s, and that's 15 years from now.
Okay, say 2039. Do you think?
Well, so here's the thing.
It's a super right. It's a very tight-lipped program, so we have no idea how far along they are.
People are going to say that, but the problem is not the development; it's the operational side. Right, it could be the tightest lip, so to speak, program on the world, but there is no way. Well, maybe. I mean, I've never say never, right? But it's unlikely that it's so secret that one day they're just going to be like, it's IOC, because you can do that with an F-117 or a B-2 because there's like 10 of them.
Yeah.
But a 6th-gen fighter replacement where you're trying to replace 187 F-22s and all the Eagles and stuff like that. You can't just go, bam, here's all your jets. Good luck. Because there's, they're going to have to get the infrastructure together. Yeah. They're going to have to get the maintenance plans together. They're going to have to get the training. The pipelines have to be stood up. They're going to have to start making a new NATOPS and a new -1 and a new 11-2, 6th gen Vol 3. Like all the bureaucracy that has to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, the T7 already existed for the most part, and look what's happened. The MH-139 did exist. I mean, it was a Leonardo helicopter, AW-139. I find it tough to believe that there's so much going on behind closed doors that we've never even seen one yet. Like you talked about the B-21 being on schedule, but we've seen one. Like we already know what it looks like.
Yeah.
Dude, it's 2024.
Well, you're right. I mean, we're as just nobody fighter pilots, like I just look at the trend line.
Yeah.
And the trend line as far as timelines is not getting shorter.
Yeah.
I mean, you can use the hey, we need it because of China, but I mean, I don't think that's going to speed anything on. The only thing, man, that'll make it go faster is if, God forbid, we are in a full-blown war and like our existence depends on, us winning, and our way of life depends on this thing being built, which we'll have way bigger problems.
Yeah. The aliens will have won by then. We're done. Yeah. I just don't see that, dude. Maybe it's just me. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, Gonky, is that the end? Have we reached the end?
Yeah, that was cool, man.
We got some.
I liked all that medical talk, man. I like learning something every once in a while.
Yeah. Cal says, talk about lack of red tape. Look up the Thunder Screech Supersonic 6.6 prop fighter.
Really? Is that a real thing?
I don't look up things people tell me to on the internet.
Is this work friendly?
The propeller was supersonic. I don't think the airplane ever got there.
Oh, I thought propellers fly apart when they go supersonic. Could be wrong. My prop aerodynamics is lacking.
Yeah, I don't know. Laura says Luna is hanging out with a new work friend and learning new tricks. She's SWAT now. Yeah, that was the other April Fool's thing I did. I was just trying to piss off K9.
Dude.
I had Luna with the SWAT goggles.
Yeah.
A little SWAT water bottle that says K9, and she's a sheepdog. Obviously, she had to have beef jerky, in her case, pepperoni, some energy drinks, and then a Hellcat Durango as her patrol unit. And then Clarence here, new reserve K9. He's sniper qualified. Also
I love it, dude.
At shock therapy.
These are your thumbnail skills coming to light.
Yeah. But yeah, that's Luna Bell. people believe it though. Let's see. Salute to Officer Luna. She's a deputy, actually.
She's out.
She's laying there. She's just laying there like you cannot move without me knowing about it. Hi, Luna says zippers forever. Joe says, my first thought was what you said, Gonky. If they're going to build an all-service NGAD, then based on what happened with Amy, no way gets done in the 30s.
Yeah, I mean, they tried this with the F-111. You know, they tried it with the F-35. I'd argue probably the F-4 was probably the most successful fighter that all the services could use, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, man.
Different times, man. Different times.
Back in the day. All right, Gonky. What else you got? Oh, Cal says more, yeah. XF-84.
What is that? Thunder Chief Chicken? Thunder Chicken? Chief Chicken.
Thunder Chicken.
Yeah, man. No, that was cool. We had the doc on. It's nice to talk about other things or actually let other people talk about cool things every once in a while. Yeah, I ended up not doing the thing with Casmo, but we're going to reschedule here in a couple of weeks.
He should have more time now. He's talking about doing some more DCS stuff, so hopefully he can do that with you.
Yeah, he was moving, so once he gets that squared away, I'll be on with Casmo, and yeah, man, I don't know.
Yeah. All right, well, everybody, thank you for your time. Doug, you got anything? We didn't even get your mental health minute talk, Doug.
Oh no, I thought we rolled that into the flight doc.
That's what I'm saying. We didn't get to your take on the mental health minute. We
Everything he said was true and supported by data. I like the
guy. Yeah, Doug was back there fact checking everything.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
I fact checked him back in grad school.
Yeah, sorry he had to bail, but I mean, I appreciate him being there.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Chappie. We talked about that.
Oh yeah,
really crappy. So anyway, well, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching, and we'll probably see you next. Oh wait, Omega says, hey, thanks for the encouragement. I figured I'd change my profile pic to an F-16. This picture at New Orleans Air Show. Anyway, thanks for everything, mate.
Nice.
There you go. Awesome, the Luna SWAT post won April Fools, according to Zipper. Why? Of course she could be SWAT. She's perfect. And Clarence looks tough. He looks like he'll be teaching her to crush beer cans against her head. Yeah, I don't want a bad example.
That's awesome. Dude, she's out.
She's done. Her ear perked up and she side-eyed me, but she wouldn't pick her head up. She's like, I'm done with you. All right, guys, gals, people of Earth.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks,
hope
guys.
You enjoyed it. See you next time.
We'll see you.
Bye.